Two. We're good. Two. It'll get better in here. Did you put on 72 or 72?
I've done it.
You're just getting nervous.
Yeah.
Because we're on all sides. I'm just going to feel confident.
No, I feel very well protected. Did you see me waving in front of the secretary? There's two of you in there.
Yeah. I felt.
I had a professional service guy. It's called the security service. He was with a naughty guy that's in jail. And I'm actually glad to have him. He's a very good worker. And we got along well. And it's going to help me a lot clean up the park. And you know what?
Yes, I should dress up that Pastor Dennis.
We are. And he said, I will never talk to him. He said, I was
Just get me ready. All right, okay. As long as you did it back in the day, I'm with you, brother.
Mike, you ready?
Sure.
All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Before we do our invocation and pledge of allegiance this evening, I'd like to ask Chief Scholl, Chief Pfeiffer, and Sergeant Cox to please come up front. I'm going to be like Georgia. I'm going to stand in the middle. I hope you all had a chance this week to see on the news that the city of Vienna was ranked in the top 10 for the safest cities in the state of West Virginia. It's quite an honor and a tribute, not only for our police department, but also for all of the other first responders that we have. Chief Scholl and his men and women are volunteers, and they voluntarily give up their time to come out at any kind of disaster or any kind of event that the city has. Without them, Vienna would not be the town that it is. And so I know the other night when Chief Pfeiffer was on television, I was very impressed because Vienna is a special town. We've been blessed with many things, and to be ranked in the top 10 in the state, as we have been for the last couple of years, it's really a tribute to them and the work that they do. And I know that Mike, in his interview on the television, talked about all the activities that we do with the drugs and with the youth and all the things that are there, and they are very good at that. But this past week, there was an incident that happened that I think shows everything that our police department is about and what is really the flavor of our town. On April the 16th, there was an automobile accident on Grand Central Avenue, which is not unusual because we have a lot of them on Grand Central near the mall. But in this particular situation, there was a lady that got hit, and it wasn't her fault, and her car was totaled. And so one of her family members called me, and she wanted me to express her gratitude to the police officer that helped with this situation. So I called Chief Pfeiffer and asked him to pull the records, And as it turns out, Sergeant Cox was the officer that was in charge of that accident. And it's funny the way things happen in life. You can never plan for these things. But in this lady's particular circumstances, the day before, her husband had had a major medical issue and could no longer drive. And so this lady was driving because he couldn't. And then she ends up getting hit in an accident, totals her car. And at that point, she said she literally felt like her life and her world were coming apart. And so for Officer Cox, Sergeant Cox, to have been the one in charge and to have treated her, as she said, with so much compassion that he'll never know what it meant to her to get her through that situation. And so, Sergeant Cox, thank you so much for what you do for our town and the way you represent our police department. Sure. Chief Piper, thank you very much for running the city the way you do. And Chief Scholl, and for all of your volunteers, thank you. We owe you all a lot. So, thank you. Would you stand with me, please, for the invocation and pledge of allegiance? Councilman Rogers.
Let us pray. Our God, our Father in heaven, we thank you for this day. We thank you for all the things that you've given to each and every one of us here. We pray that you'll be with us tonight and guide us as we go about the business of the city. We continue to pray for those serving the armed forces abroad in harm's way. Be with them, guard them, protect them. These things we pray in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. Sergeant Cox, would you please lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This evening I have a proclamation that I would like to read, designating May as Older Americans Month. Whereas the city of Vienna includes countless older Americans who enrich and strengthen our community. And whereas the city of Vienna is committed to engaging and supporting older adults, their families, and caregivers. And whereas we acknowledge the importance of taking part in activities that promote physical, mental, and emotional well-being, no matter your age. And whereas the city of Vienna can enrich the lives of individuals of every age by promoting home and community-based services that support independent living, involving older adults in community planning, events, and other activities, and providing opportunities for older adults to work, volunteer, learn, lead, and mentor. Now, therefore, the city of Vienna does hereby proclaim May 2018 to be Older Americans Month. We urge every resident to take time during this month to recognize older adults and the people who serve them as vital parts of our community. Thank you. I'd like to call to order this regular session of the Vienna City Council for April the 26th, 2018. Let the record reflect that I've taken roll, that all members of council are present. Having a quorum, we will proceed. The minutes from the regular council meeting held on April the 12th, 2018, and the special council session held on April 17th, 2018, have been printed, posted, and circulated. Are there any corrections to the minutes? If there are no objections, then the minutes will stand approved as posted. Report of the treasurer, Councilman Leach.
Thank you, Mayor. City Finance Director Amy Roberts has provided me a reconciliation of funds dated April 26, 2018 for the City of Vienna. I've reviewed the accounts. They're in order, and the city is financially sound.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to make a slight change to the agenda this evening. Under new business, the first item is Mr. Greg Frazier. Because we have so many items left over from last week, we're going to move Greg up, and we're going to let you speak before we go into the old business. Okay, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Greg Frazier. I live at 1210 22nd Street here in Vienna. I come tonight to solicit your vote in favor of the second reading of the ordinance adopting rules governing public comment portion of Vienna City Council meetings. Last meeting I shared with you why the ordinance is important to me, and let me just refresh your memory briefly. As it stands now, in order to speak, I have to remember to call the recorder's office on Monday before that week's council meeting. The problem with this is, I don't know what's on the agenda that week, as the agenda is not made public till Tuesday before that week's council meeting. How could I possibly know what I want to speak about when I don't know what's on the agenda? It appears to me that you're trying to silence my vote, or my voice on items. Last meeting, the mayor had said that citizens could speak on items that required a second reading, and that's true. I looked back on my records and researched all the agendas since September the 28th. That's when I first started attending council meetings. And I noticed that if I would have used the mayor's reasoning, well, first of all, back up. Out of 48 items on the agendas, only six of those involved reading a second reading. So if I used the mayor's reasoning, I would have been denied the opportunity to speak on 42 other topics. Seems rather lopsided to me. The city attorney made some very compelling speech of why the ordinance is not needed. None of his objections carry more weight than my argument that my voice is being silenced on agenda items, because I have to call in and have my name placed on the agenda before the agenda is made public. If this ordinance is passed, I would like for the public comments to be moved right after the treasurer's report, as the mayor did tonight. I do thank you for doing that, sir. So, in closing, do the right thing. Vote in favor of this ordinance. Don't silence my voice on agenda items. Make it easy for citizens to speak on all matters before City Council. Not difficult. Thank you for your time and attention.
All right. Moving on to unfinished business. The first item on our agenda this evening is an ordinance on second reading for the purchase of 612 29th Street. This is an ordinance approving and authorizing the purchase of real property located at 612 29th Street, Wood County, West Virginia. Be it ordained by the Common Council of the City of Vienna that the mayor is directed and authorized to take all steps as are reasonably necessary to purchase a parcel of real property located at 612 29th Street, Vienna, Wood County, 0.15 acre tract on tax map 2, parcel 139, for the total purchase price of $80,000. Prior to making such purchase, the city shall perform its due diligence. The city shall, if necessary, pay, in addition to the aforesaid purchase price, normal and customary closing costs assessed to a purchase of real property. Title to said real property shall be taken in the names of the City of Vienna. This purchase is for the public purpose of a potential future site for a new city hall. I'll entertain a motion on second reading for the ordinance approving the purchase of 612 29th Street.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve on second reading the ordinance approving and authorizing the purchase of real property located at 612 29th Street. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, then I'll call for the question. All those in favor on second reading of the ordinance authorizing the purchase of 612 29th Street, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed? Let the record reflect it. Passed 5-2. Recorder, did you get the break? All right, thank you. The second item on our agenda this evening is also an ordinance on second reading requiring hiring to be approved by a majority vote of council. This ordinance requiring City Council approval of all City of Vienna employee hires. Be it ordained by the Common Council of the City of Vienna that it shall be wholly reserved unto the Common Council of the City of Vienna the sole and exclusive power and authority to approve the hiring of all department head positions. Further, replacement, filling, or backfilling any position that has been previously budgeted must be approved by the Human Resource Director only after receiving input from the department head. No additional city positions may be created without council's approval. I'll entertain a motion for the approval of this ordinance on second reading.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the ordinance on second reading. Is there any further discussion? Yes, sir, Bruce?
I'd like to offer an amendment. The only thing I have is if there would happen to be a vacancy in our Human Resource Director, hopefully that will not happen, but we've had it happen before. I'd like, if the Human Resource Director, if we don't have that position or anyone in that position, then I'd like to have the mayor substitute for the Human Resource Director. And I'll make that a motion right after head where it starts, it says no additional positions. If you add this phrase, Russ might be able to make it sound a little better. If the city has no Human Resource Director, then the mayor may substitute for the Human Resource Director.
You get that? Bruce made the motion, waiting on a second. Okay.
Go ahead, Roger.
But wouldn't that happen anyway?
I don't know, but I'd
No.
like to see it in black and
It
white.
would not. Okay, if it were down to where, for whatever reason, we would lose our HR director, then we would have to come back to council and we would have to put in there the stipulation that it would be me that would fill that position. Okay, because the way the ordinance is written, it would be the department head in conjunction with the HR director. But if she's not available, then it would fall back to the mayor. Okay, is that your intent, Bruce?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Well, that's what your amending the ordinance to say now.
That is
In
the amendment.
In the event there's presently no sitting human resource director, then
Right.
the authority reverts back to the mayor, pending approval or appointment. of the
Mayor and
human
department
resource
head.
director. Is that right?
that's as I understood it.
Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Okay.
And then once that position of the HR director's been filled, then it reverts back to the HR
Yes.
director, correct?
Yes. Hopefully it'll never happen, but it has happened in the past.
Okay. Motion's on the floor.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we amend the ordinance to include the words,
Who seconded it? Was that you?
Jim? To put in the stipulation that if the human resource director is not,
Position.
the position is not filled, then it would fall back to the mayor with the department head's input. Okay? Any further discussion? All those in favor of the amendment, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed? And I'm going to abstain since it's me. All right? So 5-1 with one abstention. So now the amendment, the ordinance on second reading shall read, be it ordained by the Common Council of the City of Vienna that it shall be wholly reserved unto the Common Council of the City of Vienna the sole and exclusive power and authority to approve the hiring of all department head positions. Further, replacement, filling, or backfilling any position that has been previously budgeted must be approved by the Human Resource Director only after receiving input from the department head. If the Human Resource Director position is not filled, then the mayor and the department head will do the backfilling. No additional city positions may be created without council's approval. Any further discussion?
Can I just reiterate?
Can I just reiterate, as I did at the last meeting? There are essentially two sections here in this ordinance. The first is, council taking authority for hiring employees and moving it to a department head. The department head is a person who ultimately could be hired or fired by the mayor. So realistically, this ordinance doesn't really other than approving, allowing department heads to be approved by council, which is, while not a change from the way that we've always done it, it's codifying it. But as far as the backfilling and hiring positions, this ordinance does nothing except put a layer between the mayor and the employees as far as hiring. So if I'm a mayor and I don't agree with Human Resources' decision as to filling a position, the mayor retains the authority, because the city of Vienna is an at-will employee, of just saying, well, you can hire the person that I've suggested you hire, or we can appoint a new human resource director. So I don't know that this really does anything, except it does add a layer between the mayor, and it allows the mayor to, any mayor, and I just use the term of the office, to just do I don't want to say slough off, but to put that power or that responsibility on an appointee. So just pointing it out. The first part of the ordinance is just a codification of doing what we've always done, which is to get council approval for department heads. The second part of the ordinance doesn't really do anything except put all of the impetus on the human resource director, who still has to operate under the authority of the mayor. So just making sure council, that's my interpretation of what the proposed ordinance is. So as long as we all understand that.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I agree with what City Attorney Russ is saying. The city has representation, legal representation. He guides us as we sit up here in these chairs representing our citizens. I, for one, take what he says as recommendations as to heart. And it's for that reason that I can't go along with this either. I trust what our city attorney says, and I think we should do exactly what he says. If it's not necessary, then there is no need to actually do it.
Yes, sir, Bruce?
I think there's a third part of this too, and I think that is what Mr. Conley came up with before, and that is no new hires that are not in the budget can be made during the fiscal year without going through budget and finance process and council. So I think there's also a third layer.
You're right.
And that is key, in my opinion.
Yes.
Again, I would point out that council already has that power and exercises that power. For the third part where it says no additional city positions may be created without council's approval, council already has that power. This is just reiterating it. That power comes in the budget. Council had, during the budget process, just so everybody understands what is being asked, council voted on an exercise of exactly that power when there was on the agenda, I believe there was a resolution or an amendment, I can't remember exactly what it was, to the budget, eliminating the funding for the economic developer position. That is exactly what this does here. No additional city positions may be created without council's approval. So unless I'm missing something, which is possible, this is really just reiterating something that council already has the authority to do. Now, if the intent was to put a set number on department employees, council could do that by passing a resolution or an ordinance or however, saying each department may only have X number of laborers. The Public Works Department may only have 15 labor positions, may have, however many. Council has the authority to do that. That's not what this does. This just does something that you already have the authority to do, which is to just not fund things that you don't like, or at least vote on things, not funding things or positions that you don't believe are necessary. But again, I don't have a dog in the hunt. It's your decision. It's not mine. I just want to make sure that everybody understands what the deal is.
I just want to point out that, when I brought this up, it's because we had gone from 61 employees to 81. And the dollar amount of the expenditures involved with those employees, whether it be through direct wages or indirect benefits or whatever, has substantially gone up as well. And I did actually go back and look through a lot of past agendas to try to make sure that with each one of those, I could tie that to some sort of an internal budget revision, and quite frankly, I was not able to do that, but with a couple of occasions. So, you know, I still stand by the fact that I want us to maintain the ability to control the number of employees that we have, and I want us to be able to control the expenditures that we lay out to hire those employees.
For the record, I have probably the greatest group of department heads that work for the city of Vienna in the state of West Virginia. I would trust every one of them to make decisions based on their expertise and talents, because I know that they all believe in the city of Vienna. And as far as the things that are stipulated in this, almost everything that happens in the city of Vienna I'm involved in, as it should be. And so the way the ordinance has been presented is fine with me, because I would have conversations with Stephanie or whoever the HR director was and whoever the department head is through the interview process or through whatever the qualifications were to be determined. So the items that are in this ordinance are fine with me, okay? That I have no issue with this, all right? So unless there's another comment, we're going to go to a vote, okay? So all those in favor of the ordinance requiring council's approval of all City of Vienna employee hires, and then as it says, stated, be it ordained by the Common Council of the City of Vienna that it shall be wholly reserved unto the Common Council of the City of Vienna the sole and exclusive power and authority to approve the hiring of all department head positions. Further, replacement filling or backfilling any position that has been previously budgeted must be approved by the Human Resource Director only after receiving input from the department head. In the event that the human resource position is not filled, that position will be filled by the mayor until that position is filled. No additional city positions may be created without council's approval. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed? All right, motion carried. On the second reading. All right, so we move on. The third item is on second reading, and it is a second reading requiring a council comment section to appear on all city council agendas, and a time for council comments to be heard at all regular and special council meetings. This ordinance, be it ordained by the Common Council of the City of Vienna that at every regular and special city council meeting.
This should be.
This
That
is
should be the
incorrect.
amended ordinance that says, that takes out the two
meetings.
The two meetings that we amended it to at the last council meeting. Yeah, the ordinance that is in the Dropbox is not the amended ordinance.
Okay. Well, I don't think it's critical. I think we can do this, and if we have any objections, we'll do something else. But it's very simple. It says, be it ordained by the Common Council of the City of Vienna that at every regular council meeting there shall be held a period for council members to comment on each regular council agenda, with the exception of council meetings to vote on the final budget and lay the levy. There shall appear a heading titled Council Comments to be placed at the end of the agenda immediately prior to the meeting's closure. During this period, each council member shall be given the opportunity to speak on any subject, request an item be placed on a future agenda, to give special recognition or acknowledgement to any person, to advertise a special event, or to speak upon or make a request on any item or event that cannot or is not an item upon which council may take action. In the event that a subject or topic arises that council can or may take action on, further discussion shall immediately cease, and the matter shall be referred to the appropriate commission, council, or other municipal governing body in accordance with the Open Meetings Act, to be properly placed on an agenda and duly noticed so that it may be appropriately considered by the governing body. I'll entertain a motion on second reading for the approval of the ordinance as amended.
Did you read in the exceptions?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, I was just, didn't hear it.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay?
I was trying to find it on my computer.
Okay, then we'll start again.
No, you're.
No. I'll entertain a motion on for second reading, requiring the council comment section to appear on the council agenda and a time for council comments to be heard at all regular council meetings.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt an ordinance on second reading, requiring the council comment section to appear on all city council agendas, exempting the two meetings where we do the levy and voting on the annual budget. Any discussion? All those in favor on second reading of the ordinance requiring a council comment section to appear on the council agendas, please signify by raising your right hand. Okay. All those opposed, same sign. 6-1. Okay. Passes on second reading. Okay. The next item on second reading is an ordinance adopting rules governing the public comment portion of the City of Vienna council meetings. Since this is the second reading, do I need to read it in its entirety again?
No.
No, Russ, you
You
don't.
can read the amendment.
An ordinance setting forth and adopting rules governing the public comment portion of the Vienna City Council meetings. Be it ordained by the Common Council of the City of Vienna that it does hereby adopt the following rules governing the public comment portion of the public meetings, hearings, proceedings in the City of Vienna. I'll entertain a motion on second reading for its adoption.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Yes, sir, Bruce?
Yes, my question is, I don't know how many people out there have seen all the things that are in here or heard them. I don't think we really need it as an ordinance, but I agree that we need to just come in, sign up, and you got 3 minutes to speak or not. I don't think we have to need it as an ordinance, but I would like to have a time for those that are out here to, other than just the time we have had, to let me know how they feel about certain things, because I don't want Chief Pfeiffer to have to remove someone from the podium because they're not staying on, or they're declared disturbing the meeting. There's several other things in here that I'm not really sure that some people might want to see as far as this is concerned. I agree with what Mr. Frazier said. We need a time for people to speak. What I'd like to do is table this until our next meeting, the second reading, and I'll make that as a motion.
I object. I want to continue forward with the motion that we have.
So we have a motion to table.
I don't have a second yet for that, so we won't proceed with that until someone seconds it. Okay? We don't have a second, Bruce. I'm sorry, we won't table that this evening.
It's okay.
Let me, if I might make a comment. Well, first off, any other comments?
Yes, I have a legal comment.
Well,
Whenever you want me to do it, you run the meeting. I'm just a guy who sits in just over here.
okay. Go ahead, Mr. Skogstad.
Well, first thing, I want to make sure everybody has looked at the amendments that I added. The only thing that's really different is paragraph 7 and 8. And shame on me, I should have thought to do this when I wrote this thing. Time limits, the time for public comment shall not exceed 5 minutes. I had 3, because that's kind of what we've been doing. 5 minutes per speaker unless more time is granted by the presiding officer. And the paragraph 8, the total time limit for the public comment portion of any proceeding shall not exceed 30 minutes. So those are the 2 amendments that were asked for at the last council meeting, and I put those in. Everything else is the same. To address Mr. Rogers' concerns, all I have done is to essentially codify for the municipal ordinance what is already law in the United States. As far as these meetings go, a lot of the rules, or as far as our meetings go, a lot of the rules that are in this book, or in this ordinance, are the results of Supreme Court decisions, United States Supreme Court decisions, and I've simply just taken those things and put them into the ordinance. And most of them are common sense, to be honest with you, but, and I'm sure I would love to give you a long dissertation as to how they evolved to this point, but I would also like to go home. So, the second thing is to also address Bruce's point, and it all ties in with the council comment to some degree. But public comment, the council controls its own agenda. I want to make sure that everybody understands that. The council controls its agenda. It controls the form of the agenda. It controls what items go on the agenda. It controls public comments, council comments, and so forth. It does not need to do that by ordinance. The only thing the council has to do is to comply with certain things that are in state code. Taking minutes, writing down who actually says what, and the vote. Right? Actually taking minutes and writing down who voted on what and how it was voted on. So the agenda, minutes, what was voted on. This public comment, the council could do the exact same thing by adopting a resolution. Now, the reason I'm not against taking anything away, I'm thrilled because I've been doing this, sitting up here in this chair for 10 years, and the last 2 years is the only time that I've seen people that have an interest in the city council come to these meetings. Most of the time, it's the department heads and Mr. Wilson, but Kathy Stoltz, and that's it. So I think it's wonderful that you all come. But one of the things I don't like to do is to create ordinances that can cause problems that we either haven't thought about or are passing just for expediency's sake. This public comment, you could do it by resolution, and you could say we adopt, these rules by resolution, and it gives the authority, it gives the ability for council to essentially knock 2 weeks off of being able to remove it if it decides. And the reason I say that that's important is 5 or 6 years ago, we had the group of people that like to come around and protest, military funerals and stuff, the God hates whatever people. And I can't remember the name of the church. And I didn't want to say their name, but but you could foresee where those people could come in for 30 minutes and they could say, we're going to come back for the next however and harass your meetings or harass your town or whatever. And council would have to take 2 readings of an ordinance to essentially take this off the agenda. If they did, and that could be a month. And you could do it by resolution in 1. So if it goes on by resolution by council, odds are it's going to take the action, well, it's not odds are, it would take the action of council to take it away. So it's not that I don't want you to speak. I want you to come to every meeting and say, listen, Mr. Skogstad, I think you're a big jerk. I think you need to listen to what I have to say, and if you don't like it, too bad. That's wonderful. That's democracy. I don't want to take away your voice, but I just want council, if they're going to pass something, to understand that they don't need to do it by ordinance. They don't need to codify it this way. They have a way to do it more quickly, and it allows them the flexibility to deal with it later. And all of the other rules that I put in there are just simply things that we already couldn't do. So if you get up and speak, you can call me the biggest jerk in the world, right? And unless you're disrupting the meeting, I can't I can't, or have the mayor can't instruct Chief Pfeiffer to drag you out of here, right? But that's all it is. So I don't recommend passing it. It's unnecessary. Again, I had a guy insult me all the way from the circuit courtroom because he didn't like, my opinion of where he should spend the next 3 or 4 years. It wasn't at his house. And that's okay. I'm used to it. I'm a big boy. I can handle it. But I'm just saying I don't like to create regulations where you don't need them or things that already hamper council. Council wants to do that, that's fine. But you can do the same thing by resolution, and if you have to deal with it later, it's a lot more quicker. My 5th grade English teacher is going to come up and smack me with a ruler. It's a lot easier to do it by resolution, by ordinance. That's just my opinion.
Are you done?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm going to go for a minute, Bruce. Okay. You know, it's interesting, the last couple meetings, we've discussed this quite thoroughly. And I have to agree with Mr. Leach and Mr. Rogers. The 15-minute sign-in sheet, when you go to the Board of Education, works very well because it allows people to come in and speak if something comes up, you know, in the newspaper or whatever, you want to comment about that. And so I also would like to see this ordinance be voted down. And I can tell you that if it is voted down, that for every council meeting from here on out, we will put the sign-up sheet up. And we will open it up for 5 minutes per person, up to a 30-minute time limit. And then we're not bound by any of the ordinances or the things that are in there that Mr. Skogstad referred to. I don't particularly like the language in here because it makes it sound like, you know, we're going to drag you out in shackles if you say something that's not good. And, you know, when Mr. Frazier got up and spoke a few minutes ago, in the 13 years that I've been here, there's never been one person that's ever been denied the opportunity to speak. Now, the process may have been a little cumbersome, and obviously we can fix that, okay? But of the 41 items that you referred to, you had every opportunity to speak about that, and we would have never stopped you. As Mr. Skogstad said, I think it's a great thing for the community to be involved because I know we've learned a lot over the past few months about things that go on, and it gives us an opportunity to have dialogue back and forth because the 7 of us sit up here, but you all are the ones that really have the input into the city of where you want to see it go. And so that's very important to me. I know it is to all the rest of the people that sit up here. And so if this is voted down, then starting with the next council meeting, we will go to the sign-in sheet 15 minutes before the council. It'll be out there on where the agendas are. If you care to speak, that's entirely up to you. And you know, we will go with that format in 5 minutes and 30-minute total time limit. So that's my feeling and my comment to all of you. We will alter that if this is voted down. Okay, now Bruce.
One of my biggest things, and what Greg did today about addressing us as a body, I think it's great. And same way with Russ, I'm glad that everyone here has been here and are still coming over a period of time because you're learning more about what's happening in this city. On number 9, it says, public comment does not require any member of the governing body to provide any answer to the speaker, which there has been speakers in the past who got up and spoke and addressed individual council people directly. And this is one of the rules you cannot do. So what Mr. Leach has said before, I mean, you can call him anytime, talk to him, there's no problem. I'm the same way. I think my phone number is on the website, maybe the only one you can get directly on the website. But anyway, if I do something wrong, I am human and I do make mistakes, and I hope you get in contact with me. To make something personal from the podium to a councilman, I think is wrong. But it says it in here, so it will, if this passes, this is one of the areas that you can't ask an individual person, council person, like I can't ask Mr. Ingram about games playing at the fields or something like that. You can't talk to him individually about that. It has to be on the agenda, and you have to talk to us as a body. So there are other areas in here that I think I have concern with, and that's why I asked for a table, but that won't happen. So I just wanted everyone to know about that.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I brought both of these ordinances forward for the simple reason that my voice as a councilman was silenced. And I want to ensure that going forward with the ordinances, that doesn't happen to me as a councilman or anyone else as a councilman or any citizen involved. So that's the reason these ordinances are here today, is because of what has happened in the past, and I want to make sure it doesn't happen in the future.
I have a comment. So number one, I got 2 phone calls this week, thank you. And what I couldn't answer, I returned. Secondly, I agree with what Russ says about first of all, when we look at our ordinances, you have to slog through them already. Just like in the legislature this year, there's about 2,600 bills introduced, 2,500, 240 passed. The same with our ordinances. I think, we want to adopt things that are really in the best interest and need of the community. I don't see this as being the case. I accept the explanation with respect to, Roger wanted to comment at the end of the budget session. It's always been a standing rule, which he was not aware of, nor was I. And the other was on the open meetings explanation the mayor gave. And the other thing is just a matter of common courtesy. My issue last week, as I mentioned to all you, was I did not know that you could not know what the agenda was before you spoke, because I'm not involved in that process. And so I was not satisfied with that. I've been to board education meetings, and that's what you do. You just go in, and it can't be more than 15 minutes before. You just put your name down. You have the opportunity to look at the agenda, and that's taken care of. And so for all those reasons, and also, again, avoiding unintended consequences, I'm a firm believer that we certainly should have the civility and the trust in our citizens that we put this and we say you're going to be able to speak and know what the agenda items are and come in and put your name down. That's good enough for me.
Okay.
So the resolution is if we submit a resolution, next week we can start with sign-in sheet. They can talk, right?
It won't take a resolution.
Doesn't? Okay.
You don't need a resolution to start doing this with the next agenda. If you want to put these rules in the forms of a policy, you can do a resolution and do the exact same thing. But it just takes away your ability to stop doing it in the event that you, council, wanted to stop doing it in the future, for whatever reason. Or to change it.
Yeah, my suggestion is we just adopt this policy, see how we go as far as not a resolution, but just put the sign-up sheet up and come in and talk.
Okay. All right. All right, we have a motion and a second for the ordinance on second reading, setting forth and adopting rules governing the public comment portion. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand if you're in favor of the ordinance as presented. All those opposed, please signify by raising your right hand. Motion is denied on second reading.
Well, we're going to put it on the agenda.
And there will be a clipboard over by the agenda every week, okay? You will be given 5 minutes to speak on a 30-minute time period, okay? All right? We've already done the first item under new business, so we'll move on to the second one, the resolution. The resolution is to temporarily close Spencer's Landing to the public. Mr. Conley, this was yours, so any comments, sir?
Yes, I do. And the reason I was in favor of doing this, right now the DEP still does not have the final reports from Mr. Rebar. They're still waiting on the risk assessment and the remediation action plans. Upon receipt of that report, the DEP will require 30 days for their review process to approve or amend. Mr. Hancock has stated, as we all know, that there are issues and there are areas of concern that will require remediation. Whether that is capping specific areas or whether that's capping the total area is yet unknown. The depth of the capping that's going to be required is also unknown. At some depth within that capping process, a geofabric will have to be installed, and if that fabric appears any time in the future, whether it be a year later, 2 years later, additional capping will then be required, so this is something that's going to be a continual maintenance item and an ongoing cost. Obviously, the amount of time that will be required to complete this remediation action plan is unknown, as we still don't know what we're going to have to do yet, as is the case with the cost. And when it comes to the cost, currently there are no funds available in the budget until July, and then we only have $75,000 left in the new budget for the Manville project. Because of all this, I do not see this being completed anytime soon. That is why I believe we need to, at this time, limit the exposure. About 6 months ago, we had a very unfortunate fire over at the old O. Ames facility, now known as IEI. And as you all know, that fire burnt for several days and concerned an awful lot of citizens, as it should have. And I say that to say this, during that, the initial air quality testing that was done on site was said to be okay. However, I'm not even sure that fire was out, and there were lawsuits started being filed all over the place. In part, I assume, because of the unknown and the potential for exposure, just like we're talking about here. So it would be my opinion that this temporary closure needs to happen.
We have a resolution. I'll read it. Be it resolved by the Common Council of the City of Vienna that Spencer's Landing is closed to the public until further notice is taken by council reopening it. I'll entertain a motion for the approval of that resolution.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any comments?
Of course, I have one on this issue. Some of the mischaracterization by Councilman Conley. Here's where we stand on Manville, and I've said this, and it's going to be very brief. The only issue we have is the risk assessment is complete. The issue is that in West Virginia, we have either a residential standard or we have an industrial standard. Surrounding states, Ohio and Pennsylvania, both have recreational standards. We are right on the edge with our risk assessment of the residential standard. And the industrial standard is, we want that to be as clean and tight as we can. So that's the issue here. If the DEP or a licensed remediation specialist felt that there was any hazard to the public in continuing to use Spencer's Landing, then they would impose that on that. And I think that Councilman Conley attempting to usurp that authority based on his incomplete information is not something that we can rely on, and we should rely instead on the professionals who do this for a living and protect us, and have thoroughly looked at this because of all the controversy that's been around it. So I would oppose the resolution.
I would just add that the risk assessment, according to Mr. Hancock yesterday, is not complete, and he is waiting on that. And his words was, until he gets that, which he, again, I'll repeat, does not have, when he gets that risk assessment and the remediation action plan, it will take him at least 30 days to review it, and then he will approve or amend it. That was as of yesterday.
And again, the issue is the residential, how they're gonna deal. That's what our holdup is how, because we're missing the standard, which West Virginia really needs, because there is a need for all three.
I agree with Mr. Connell. We keep talking this triad report that you guys dismiss all the time, but that triad report was there, and I it's better safe than sorry, closing the Spencer's Landing, because we don't know. I mean, we're speculating that it's not good or maybe it's not bad, but we don't know. So just to say to keep it open, it's kind of, I think it's still a risk setting yourself up for the lawsuit on down the road if there is something down there, because right now we don't know. I mean, I'd say I talked about the triad report again. I know there's these two guys, Rebar and Hancock, but until I see something physically, I'm with Mr. Conley and close it down for a while until we find out for sure what's going on.
I believe that Mr. Conley is misinformed again. This past week, Mr. Hancock was on site for another visit. He's actually up here twice this past week, and so I met with him. There was an anonymous complaint filed that there was asbestos coming out of the ground down there, so we immediately took samples, took it to the lab in Cross Lanes, West Virginia, had it analyzed, and it's absolutely nothing. It was just simply batting. And so these running the red flag up that it's a hazardous situation is very disheartening, because we have complied with everything that the state of West Virginia has asked us to do in regards to Spencer's Landing. As Mr. Leach said, there are two different standards that are in place here, residential and industrial. The residential standard is set for if there are homes there and for whatever the exposure would be if you were to live or occupy that property 24 hours a day. That is not the situation. The industrial standard would be as if there were a factory or whatever on that site. And if it were an active industrial site, you would be allowed as an employee to be on that site for a minimum 16 hours a day if you worked a double shift. And so the issue with Spencer's Landing is that there will never be any homes or anything built on that piece of property. There will never be overnight stays allowed. So it is an exposure time that is the issue here. There are only 2 spots on the entire facility that exceed the industrial standard. One of them is underneath the parking lot, and it is capped adequately. The second one is over in the wooded area next to Jimmy Harper's, and it is totally out, and it will be capped to whatever degree that the DEP requires us to do. The other standards that are in there, the parameters are being examined. I had a meeting in Charleston today with the head of the DEP. And so I'm waiting for the outcome from that. But as we stand right now, we have complied with everything that the DEP has required us to do, and Spencer's Landing should not be closed.
Mayor, if I may, as far as me being misinformed, which portion of this is Mr. Hancock misinforming me on?
No, it's your interpretation of what Mr. Hancock has said. I have been with Mr. Hancock numerous times.
Okay, specifically
last week.
Specifically.
Okay.
What I just said, what did I just say that I'm misinformed about?
That there's a hazard down there that we don't know what that is. Based on the results of the testing that was done, we know what every one of those levels is. Every one of the ground drillings was done. We know what every one of the chemical levels that were attained are. It's not an unknown factor. It's what degree or what category that they place us in when the risk assessment is finally finalized.
So when Mr. Hancock says that we may be required to cap the whole lower area, we're doing that just because we want to raise it up out of the floodplain?
It depends on if we want to attain the residential standard or whether or not the industrial standard. The actual thing that we've proposed, that I've proposed, is that the state of Ohio and the state of Pennsylvania, they both have recreational standards where you're allowed to use it for a park, which is the only thing we ever wanted it for anyway. And so if they adopt the recreational standards, I believe that we will be fine. Okay? There are some areas, as I said, that we will have to cap, but we'll deal with that when it comes. We're not asking for any shortcuts to be cut. We're not asking to put any of our citizens in any kind of danger. Okay? We will do whatever's required.
And we don't know what that is yet.
But we will. But as it stands right now, we have complied with everything they have asked us to do.
But as it stands right now, we don't know what we're going to have to do down there yet, but we still have people going down there on a daily basis.
Here's what I would say, Roger, as far as your question of being misinformed. If there was a reason to close Spencer's Landing, it would be closed, all right? They have the data, they've evaluated it, and there's not a basis for the alarm that you're trying to raise, quite frankly. I mean, because if the exposure pathway as it exists right now warranted Spencer's Landing not being available to the public, it would not be. And so, in essence, I just see you trying to substitute your judgment for theirs, and it's not warranted.
Maybe we need to get Mr. Hancock to come here and address everybody, because another comment that he made to me in rebuttal to what you just said, Councilman, was that it is not up to them to make a decision as to whether to close it or not. That's the city's decision to make, not his.
That's all I have.
I don't believe that's a factual statement either.
Then we should get him to come up here and quit talking about he said, she said.
And each time this happens, I mean, we pay more because we have to compensate them for their time for, so I mean, that's fine. But as I say, you don't want to increase costs.
But it's amazing to me that we can spend millions of dollars on other things, but we're talking about spending a few $1,000s to make sure the citizens of Vienna is safe, and we could balk at that when we talk about a one-time expenditure there. I don't understand how we spend.
I don't understand your comment about the expenditures. Are you referring back to that same argument that you wanted more core drillings done?
I'm talking about in general, whether it's
We're not
court or
asking-
whether we have him to come down here and talk to us and pay his fee. You know, we spend millions of dollars on, we're talking about right now spending $80,000 on a house that we might build a city hall one sometime. So you tell me it's okay to spend $80,000 on a house that we might build a city council on someday, but it's not okay to make sure that our citizens are safe. There's something wrong with that argument, folks. I'm sorry.
Roger, excuse me, we're getting off topic here.
No, I'm not. It is on topic.
Mr. Conlon, we're getting off topic here. The whole point of this is, and you for some reason can't understand this, we have done everything that they have required us to do. Every test has been done, the analysis has been submitted. I mean, he's come on site and watched the sampling, the core drilling done. Mr. Hancock has been here for that, okay? So,
It amazes me that the conversations you guys have with him and the conversations I have with him are always different. I don't understand that. That's why we need him in front of us.
I guess because I've worked on this for 5 years and I understand it a lot better than you do.
I don't think you do, sir.
Oh, I can guarantee you I do, Roger. And
Let's
Mr.
bring
Lee-
Mr. Hancock in front of the town without time limits. Let's get to the bottom of this. And in the meantime,
The
we
issue
should
that
close
we have,
Fisher's Landing.
the issue that we have before us this evening is whether the council wants to close Spencer's Landing, okay? The issue of getting Mr. Hancock here can be dealt with, all right?
Okay,
But it
so
has
be it.
nothing to do with the item that's on the agenda, all right? Any further discussion? The resolution is be it resolved by the Common Council of the City of Vienna that Spencer's Landing is closed to the public until further action is taken by council reopening it. All those in favor of closing Spencer's Landing, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, please signify by raising your right hand. All right. The last item on our agenda this evening is the resolution acknowledging the mayor's appointment of the City of Vienna for the Vienna Parks Director. And this resolution acknowledging the mayor's appointment, be it resolved by the Common Council of the City of Vienna, that it hereby acknowledges and welcomes Mayor Randall C. Rapp's appointment of Steve Black as the Parks Director of the City of Vienna, effective May 15th, 2018. Mr. Black was selected from a large number of candidates. We received over 15 applications, and we sorted that number down to 3 candidates, which we brought in and interviewed. All 3 of those candidates were excellent candidates, but based on Mr. Black's experience with the City of Vienna and his long standing with Vienna Recreation, I believe that Steve has the insight and the outlook for the city's parks and recreation system. I know that I sent to you all an action plan that Steve prepared with his thoughts on what direction he would like to see the park go, and I see lots of growth there, and I see a lot of continuation of the programs that are already in place. So, at this time, I'll entertain a motion for the approval of the resolution appointing Steve Black as Parks Director of the City of Vienna. Excuse me, before I do that, Steve is here this evening. Steve, if you would stand so everyone can see who we're speaking about. Okay? That is Mr. Steve Black.
Never seen that guy before.
All right. Now, I'll entertain a motion for the approval of the resolution appointing Steve Black as Parks Director.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve Steve Black.
Who seconded, please? Was that you?
I think 2 of us.
Heard 2 of you at the same time.
There was a couple.
You can have it.
Okay.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the appointment of Steve Black as Parks Director for the City of Vienna. Is there any discussion?
I just want to say, Steve, I think you and adding you to the Parks Director and along with Chuck Knopfsinger, it's a welcome breath of fresh air for the City of Vienna, and like I say, your experience. I know you've run softball teams before, and you're sports minded, and I think there needs to be that some procedures and policies and things set to run the fields the way they need to be. I mean, it's probably not. You guys know I play travel baseball, and it's probably one of the finest facilities in the state of West Virginia. But I just don't think we use it for what we need to. I mean, I think there's more ample opportunity to bring people to, instead of sending our kids out of the city to play, and in these tournaments and stuff, bring people here. I know we, it's kind of I know we let our people use it, but there's times that some of our local kids can't use it. I mean, the gates are locked sometimes, and it's changed a lot, and I want to see it back the way it was before. I can take kids down there and practice on the field. So there just needs to be things. So I appreciate you, and I think you and Chuck are great additions to. And as the liaison for Randy Rapp, I'm excited to work with you.
Any further comments?
Welcome home.
I can't imagine the city being any better hands than to have Steve Black come on board, so I think we're very fortunate.
As long as you don't have to change a carburetor or anything or things like that.
There's Craig.
All right, all those in favor of the appointment of Steve Black as Parks Director, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. Steve, it's just like the budget, pass unanimously.
Yeah.
Okay? All right? And for all of you that aren't aware, Chuck Knopfsinger's here again tonight. Chuck, please stand up. Chuck's your local State Farm agent, but he's also the president of Vienna Rec. And I can honestly say, Chuck doesn't have any kids in Vienna Rec, and Chuck still dedicates a lot of time to the betterment of our leagues and to our kids. And so, as I said earlier this evening, we are very blessed with the people that live in our community that step up and help out. So, with that, that concludes our agenda for this evening. Council comments.
Yes, sir, Mayor, I do have a couple. First off, I had a couple of citizens that has called me about an alley, and I did drive up and look at it, and it's in pretty rough shape. It's an alley that runs between 11th and 12th Street and 13th and 14th Avenue down on the far end. And it's rough, and they just asked us to look at it and see if there's anything that could be done about that. The other thing, I started to do this when you got done with talking with Sergeant Cox and Chief Piper, but I would like to propose that we place on the next council agenda of May the 10th a resolution proclaiming and recognizing National Police Week, which is May 13th through the 19th, and also proclaiming and recognizing the National Police Memorial Day, which is also Tuesday, May the 15th.
Okay. Council comments. Yes, sir, Bruce.
Has anyone heard when the asbestos removal on the industrial side will start?
As soon as the Mon Power moves the wiring from this side of the street to the other, we had to take the tree out that was in the middle of 28th Street. It's gone now.
Right.
And so now I called Tim Fragel with the power company to, tell him it was gone. So we're in the system. As soon as the power's moved, they're ready to go.
Okay, thank you.
All right. I have one comment this evening, something I'm going to bring to you all soon. I don't know when, but soon. Mr. Jimmy Harper has resigned from the park board due to health reasons, and so we're going to need to appoint someone to the park board. I'm going to ask Mr. Skogstad to prepare either a resolution or ordinance, whichever it takes. I would like to see one of the park board positions filled by our city forester, and I'm not going to name him by name because I would like to see the position filled no matter who is in that position. Because we have the 300 acres of McDonough and plus all of the trees that are in Jackson Park, I believe that the city forester would be a huge asset to the Parks Department. The current forester we have is Mr. Jack Mathers, and Jack is one of the best there is. So I think appointing Jack Mathers as the city forester to the park board would be a great asset to the city because, he coordinates a lot of things. Bruce, you've had lots of experience with Jack. What would your thoughts be?
Jack would be a good person, but we need to make a change in the ordinance because Jack is not a citizen of the city of Vienna. So you need to change the ordinance so the forester would be in that position.
Yes.
The parks director is one specified as being on there, so the an ordinance would have to be changed for 2 readings. But Jack has been fantastic I've worked with him for a long time, and he does a fantastic job for the
He's brought
city.
thousands of dollars of grants into the city.
Yes.
As Mr. Rogers said, because Steve is now the Parks Director and he's automatically on the Park Board, we will have another opening on the Park Board to fill. Also, we've had a resignation on the Planning Commission. Mr. Mike Hayden is moving out of town, and so we will need to fill the position on the Planning Commission. And we've been asked by the Mid-Ohio Valley Transit Authority to appoint an additional person to the Transit Authority. So we will be appointing those positions. We can go ahead and fill Steve's position on the Park Board, but I'll have Russ draw up the proper thing to appoint the city forester, because he is not a resident of the city, or however Mr. Skogstad can do that. So anyway, I will get back to you with those things, but the appointments are open. We need to get them filled as quickly as we can. The Planning Commission is very active, and so is the Transit Authority. And we want to give Steve all the help we can with the Park Board. So, all right, with that, meeting adjourned. Oh, I'm sorry. The next council meeting will be on May the 10th at 7 o'clock.